There is a fear that haunts the heart of nearly every person who has ever dared to reach beyond what is safe. A quiet shadow that follows in the mind when we think of trying something new, speaking up, or pursuing a dream. It is not the fear of pain, nor the fear of the dark, but the fear of failure. We do not speak of it openly, for it hides behind polite smiles and quiet excuses. But it sits in the background of our choices like a patient thief, stealing our courage before we even realize it has been taken. It is a subtle enemy, and perhaps that is why it has so much power, because it does not attack us with violence, but persuades us with whispers. If you try, you might fail, it says, and we listen. We nod as if it speaks truth, as if there is some terrible shame in falling short, as if the mere absence of success were a wound to the soul. And yet, this fear is not the truth. It is only an illusion, and once you see through it, you will never again be its prisoner. The Stoics understood this long before our age of comfort and comparison. They lived in a world where loss was not an abstract thought, but a constant companion. Empires rose and fell. Friends were taken by illness in the prime of their lives, and power could shift in the space of a single morning. And yet, these men and women found a kind of freedom that many of us, with all our conveniences, cannot even touch. It was not freedom from hardship, but freedom from the chains that hardship tries to place on the mind. They had a secret, not hidden in some dusty scroll, not locked away in the palace of an emperor, but present in plain sight for any willing to accept it. It was this: failure is nothing to fear, because it is nothing at all. It is only the name we give to an outcome we did not expect. And outcomes themselves are outside the true control of any person. Consider the archer who stands with bow in hand, a tar set far across the field. He trains his eyes, feels the weight of the bowstring between his fingers, and releases the arrow. The moment the string snaps forward, the outcome is no longer his. A gust of wind may rise, the target may shift, or the arrow may wobble in flight. If it strikes the center, others will call it success. If it drifts away, they will call it failure. But what is it truly? It is simply the result. The archer controlled his preparation, his aim, his release, and in these he can find satisfaction, for they were his to command. But the final resting place of the arrow was never his possession. To grieve over it, as though it were a part of himself, is to mistake what belongs to us and what does not. This is where the fear of failure begins to dissolve. The Stoic does not say, "You will never fall short," for to promise, that would be to lie. The Stoic says instead, "What is outside your power cannot touch your peace." If you give your best effort in full alignment with your values and reason, the result is already perfect in the only way that matters. No man or woman can promise themselves a victory, but they can promise themselves integrity. And integrity is the true prize. It is untouched by the judgments of the crowd, unshaken by the accident of fate. We suffer, not because the world is cruel, but because we imagine it should bend itself to our will. We set our hearts on outcomes as though they were stones we could hold in our hands. And when those stones turn to dust in our grasp, we call it failure and feel ourselves diminished. But who told us that a moment's outcome could measure a person's worth? Who decided that stumbling on the path was proof that we should not walk at all? Nature did not teach us this. We taught it to ourselves. And if we taught it to ourselves, we can unlearn it. Imagine a child learning to walk. It lifts itself up on trembling legs, takes a step, and falls. Would you tell the child that it has failed and should therefore stop trying? No. You would smile and encourage it to stand again. You would understand instinctively that the falling is part of the walking, that progress is made not in the absence of stumbles, but through them. Why then, when we are grown, do we imagine that falling is a shameful thing? The truth is, we never outgrow the process. We are always learning to walk in some new terrain of life. we'll always have moments when our steps falter. The difference is that as adults, we too often clothe our stumbles in the language of finality, as though a single moment could define the entire journey. The Stoics invite us to look at life differently, to see that what we call failure is simply a signal, an arrow pointing to what can be improved in our effort, or a reminder that the winds of fortune are not ours to command. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not as an emperor speaking to his people, but as a man trying to master his own mind. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. There is no fear in this truth, only liberation. If we truly absorb it, the fear of failure becomes almost laughable, for it rests on a misunderstanding that failure is something real, something that can wound us. But how can a shadow harm the one who sees it for what it is? When we shift our focus from outcomes to actions, from results to virtues, we find a steadiness that no misstep can disturb. You will notice that the fear which once stood in front of you like a wall begins to dissolve into mist. This does not mean that you will never feel the quick sting of disappointment when things do not go as you hoped. The Stoic is not made of stone, but of flesh, and the first wave of feeling may still come, but it will not stay. It will not nest in your heart, for you will greet it with reason and perspective, saying, "This was not mine to control, and so it was never mine to lose." In time, you may even come to see so-called failure as a friend. It strips away the illusion that the world is under your command, and in doing so, it leaves you with a clearer view of what truly is under your command: your thoughts, your choices, your responses. In this, there is an incredible power, for these are the very roots of freedom. A person who is unafraid of failure is a person who can act without hesitation, who can speak the truth without first checking which way the wind is blowing, who can attempt great things not because success is certain, but because the attempt itself is noble. Think for a moment about the greatest men and women you have heard of, not just those who won battles or war crowns, but those whose character has outlived their flesh. Their names come to us not because they were untouched by hardship, but because they endured it without surrendering their dignity. Socrates stood before the court of Athens, accused and condemned, and did not tremble as they passed the sentence of death. He could have begged, could have turned away from the truth he lived by, and perhaps saved his life. But he did not measure himself by the prospect of escape. His measure was the alignment of his soul with what he knew to be right. To those who feared for him, his choice may have looked like failure, for it led to his death. And yet, can anyone now look back and say that he failed? Or would we say that in holding to his principles even in the face of death, he achieved the greatest kind of victory a person can claim? This is the irony of what we call failure. It is often the very soil in which our true worth is grown. It is the chisel in the hand of fate, shaping us into something stronger and more beautiful than comfort ever could. The Stoics did not seek suffering, but neither did they flee from it when it came. They saw that life, by its very nature, is woven with both triumph and loss, and that to cling to only one thread is to misunderstand the whole tapestry. If you would live without the fear of failure, you must see that the tapestry is complete only when both threads are present. You must embrace the fact that the path to what you desire will be uneven, and that the stones which bruise your feet are also the ones that mark the way forward. Yet we resist this truth. We tell ourselves that the worth of our lives is tied to the eyes of others, to the applause or disapproval of a crowd that barely knows our name. We tremble at the thought of being judged, forgetting that the judgment of others is just another outcome beyond our control. Epictetus warned against this, saying that if you wish to be free, you must give up concern for things you cannot command. He did not mean that we should live in arrogance, deaf to all feedback, but that our peace must not be a hostage to the opinions of others. What is the opinion of another person to you except a thought in their mind? And what control do you have over the thoughts of another? None. If you live by your own reason, guided by virtue, then the praise or blame of others is nothing more. Then the wind against your skin, it may be felt, but it cannot alter who you are. To truly unlock the secret that frees you from the fear of failure, you must shift the foundation on which you build your sense of worth. If you build it on the sand of success and recognition, every wave will threaten to wash it away. But if you build it on the rock of your own character, on the knowledge that you have acted with courage, wisdom, justice, and self-control, then no tide can move it. This is why the Stoics held virtue as the only true good, because virtue depends on nothing outside yourself. Fortune may strip away your wealth, your status, even your health, but it cannot strip away your honesty, your integrity, or your courage unless you hand them over willingly. And so the fear of failure dissolves in the presence of this truth. For what is failure if it cannot touch the only thing that truly matters? Imagine you have set your heart on becoming skilled in some art. It may be the art of speaking, of leading, of creating beauty with your hands. You devote yourself to practice, to discipline, to learning from those who came before you. You enter a contest and another wins the prize. The world may say you have failed. But if you have grown in skill, if you have deepened your understanding, if you have shown up with discipline and integrity, then you have achieved something far greater than the fleeting recognition of a contest. You have shaped yourself into something more than you were before, and that is success in its purest form. The mind trained in Stoic thought learns to meet both so-called success and so-called failure with the same composure. When fortune smiles, it accepts the gift with gratitude, knowing it is not permanent. When fortune turns away, it accepts the loss with calm, knowing it is not the end. In both cases, the measure is the same. Did I act with virtue? Did I fulfill the duties that lay before me? Did I remain true to reason? If the answer is yes, then nothing essential has been lost. The secret, then, is not hidden in the avoidance of failure, but in the redefinition of what it means. Once you see that the only true failure is to abandon your principles, you will find that the fear of the other kind, the kind measured in outcomes, prizes, and applause, has no hold over you. You will act freely, speak boldly, and attempt great things not because you expect the world to reward you, but because it is in your nature to strive toward the good. The mind that is free from the fear of failure does not wait for the perfect moment. It acts when the time comes, because it knows that perfection is an illusion crafted by hesitation. How many hopes have been buried not by defeat, but by the refusal to begin? We tell ourselves we are waiting until we are ready, until we are certain, until the path ahead is clear. But life does not work that way. The fog rarely lifts before we take the first steps. The Stoic understands this and steps forward anyway, trusting in the ability to adapt, to learn, to endure whatever comes. In this way, courage grows. Not the kind of courage that shouts and waves banners, but the quiet, unshakable courage that carries you through the ordinary trials of living. When you are no longer haunted by the thought, "What if I fail?" you begin to see the world differently. Obstacles no longer appear as threats to your worth, but as tasks to be met. A door that closes is simply a wall that points you toward another route. And when you find yourself on the ground, you do not ask, "Why me?" but "What now?" This shift is everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. These words are not a comforting slogan. They are the reflection of a man who governed an empire under constant pressure, who faced wars, plagues, betrayals, and the relentless weight of responsibility. He knew well that the world does not arrange itself to suit our plans. Yet he also knew that every barrier contains within it the possibility of movement, if not forward in the way we hoped, then sideways, upward, or inward. The person who fears failure sees the obstacle and stops. The person who understands this secret sees the obstacle and begins to work with it, shaping it into a step instead of a wall. You may think this is easier said than done. And it is true. It takes practice to meet the sharp edges of disappointment with calm hands. But practice is precisely the point. The fear of failure often comes from a false belief that we are fragile, that one setback will break us. This belief survives because we avoid testing it. Yet the moment you face the thing you fear and remain standing, its power begins to fade. And when you face it again and again, you come to see that you are far stronger than you imagined. Do not mistake this strength for coldness. The Stoic is not indifferent because they feel nothing, but because they have trained their heart to place feelings in their proper place. Disappointment is allowed to visit, but it is not allowed to rule. Regret may knock at the door, but it is not given a seat at the table. For if you allow these guests to stay, they will take over your home and convince you never to venture outside it again. The mind must be a fortress, not against feeling, but against being governed by feeling, in freeing yourself from the fear of failure. You are not simply protecting your peace, you are opening the door to a fuller life. Consider how many paths are never walked because someone feared they might not lead to glory. How many inventions were left unmade because someone feared they might not work? How many loves went unspoken because someone feared rejection? These are the quiet tragedies, the ones that never make a sound because they were over before they began. When you cease to fear failure, you give yourself permission to try, and in trying, you give yourself the chance to discover. And even when discovery brings you nothing that the world would call success, you have gained something the world cannot take: self-knowledge. You will know how you respond under pressure, how you adapt when things change, how you endure when things break. You will know where you are strong and where you must grow stronger. This knowledge is the true treasure buried in the soil of failure, and it is worth more than any reward handed to you without struggle. The Stoic approach to life is not about avoiding pain or pretending that losses do not matter. It is about placing them in the correct frame, seeing them as part of a larger whole that cannot be spoiled by one moment, one choice, or one outcome. When you hold this perspective, you begin to move through the world as one who is unshaken. You can risk without recklessness, dream without delusion, and endure without resentment. You are not immune to the weather of life, but you are no longer tossed like a leaf upon the wind. You have become the tree that bends but does not break. And this is where the secret begins to settle into the heart. You understand now that there is no need to hide from the possibility of failure because it is not an enemy. It is simply one of the many shapes life takes. Some days will bring you the shape of ease, others the shape of resistance. Some will bring you the shape of gain, others the shape of loss. None of these shapes are permanent, and none of them define you unless you decide they do. You are not the shape you are given. You are the one who receives it, if you wish to. Root the fear of failure out of your soul entirely. You must do more than think about these truths. You must practice them. Philosophy for the Stoic was never a matter of words alone. It was a discipline of life. Just as a musician must touch the strings daily and the athlete must train his body, the seeker of wisdom must train the mind. And the training is not always pleasant, for it asks us to stand face to face with the very things we wish to avoid. Begin by imagining in detail the outcomes you fear most. This may sound strange. Why bring to mind what you wish would never happen? But the Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it was one of their most trusted tools. If you fear losing a position, imagine waking to find the letter of dismissal on your table. If you fear the collapse of a plan, imagine the moment you discover it has failed. Picture it clearly, not to torment yourself, but to see that even in this imagined loss, you still remain. You still breathe. You still have the power to choose your next step. When you rehearse in the mind what you fear, you strip it of its power to surprise you. And what cannot surprise you cannot master you. Next, act deliberately in ways that risk small failures. This is the exercise of voluntary hardship. Not every day, but often enough to remind yourself that your peace does not depend on winning. Every contest. Speak your mind in a room where you are not certain of agreement. Attempt a skill in public that you have not yet perfected. Submit your work knowing it may be rejected. In these moments, you will feel the old fear rise, but you will also feel the strength that comes when you meet it without retreat. It is like stepping into cold water. The shock passes, and you discover you can swim. Another discipline is to measure each day by your own standard, not by the trophies it brings. Ask yourself at night, not, did I succeed? But did I act with courage? Did I use my reason? Did I treat others with justice? Did I govern my desires? If you can say yes to these, then the day was victorious, no matter what outward events occurred. And if you cannot say yes, then you have found the place where tomorrow's work must begin. In this way, failure becomes not a final verdict, but a teacher pointing you toward growth. Understand, too, that the fear of failure often comes from a confusion between the self and the role. You are not your job, your title, your project, or your plan. These are roles you play for a time, like an actor on a stage. The play may end. The role may be given to another. The script may change without warning. But you remain the same actor, capable of taking up a new part. The Stoic holds each role lightly, knowing it may be taken away. When you remember this, the loss of a role is not the loss of yourself, and the fear of losing it begins to fade. Finally, keep in mind the shortness of life. This is not a grim thought, but a liberating one. When you remember that your time is limited, you begin to see how small the fear of failure truly is. Will it matter in a year, in 5 years, in 10, that you stumbled in this attempt? Or will it matter more that you never attempted at all? Death waits for all, and it makes no distinction between those who failed and those who succeeded in the eyes of the crowd. But there's a difference between those who lived fully and those who hid from life. The former meet their end without regret, for they spent their days in the arena. The latter meet it with a heart heavy with what might have been so practice. Daily, imagine the worst so that it cannot surprise you. Risk small failures so that large ones cannot break you. Measure your days by virtue, not outcome. Hold your roles lightly. Remember your mortality. With these exercises, the fear of failure loses its teeth, and you begin to live as one who is free. Freedom, in the Stoic sense, is not the freedom to do whatever you please. It is the freedom from being ruled by fear, by desire, by the opinions of others. It is the power to act in accordance with reason, regardless of the world's applause or scorn. This is the kind of freedom that cannot be taken from you, for it is rooted not in circumstance, but in character. When you have trained yourself in this way, failure will appear to you as it truly is, not as a great shadow looming over your part, nor the smoothie over your path, but as a passing cloud that neither darkens the sun for long nor changes its light. You will move through life with a steady step, knowing that the path will twist and turn, but also knowing that no turn can take you away from yourself. And in this, you will find the peace that all seekers of wisdom desire, the peace of a mind that fears nothing it does not control, and that controls the most important thing of all, its own will. There is a story told of a man who spent years building a vessel to cross a great sea. He labored day after day, shaping the wood, sealing the joints, testing every rope and sail. When at last the ship was ready, he set out on the open waters. But soon a storm rose. The winds howled and the waves struck the vessel with fury. The ship, strong as it was, could not withstand the tempest, and it broke apart. The man was cast into the sea. Many would say his work had been for nothing, that he had failed. Yet when he washed ashore, he rose, breathed, and began again. For him, the building of the ship had not been wasted, because it had strengthened his hands, taught him the sea's moods, and revealed to him his own endurance. The journey had not been in vain, for the journey was the point. So it is with us. We build our plans and set our sails, but the storms are not ours to command. If we measure our worth by whether the shore we first imagined appears before us, we will think ourselves ruined whenever the winds change. But if we measure our worth by the strength of our effort, the clarity of our mind, and the courage of our heart, then no wave can erase what we have gained. The fear of failure dissolves when you see that no storm can strip away the virtues you have cultivated. There is another image the Stoics favored: life as an actor's role. Imagine you are cast in a play. You do not choose the script, nor the length of the performance. You may be given the role of a king or of a servant, of a merchant or a soldier. The play may be a comedy, or it may be a tragedy. Your task is not to change the play, but to perform your role with excellence while not it is yours. If your role ends early, you step off the stage without complaint, knowing that your part was played to the best of your ability. In this way, success and failure lose their meaning, for the true question becomes, did I play my part well? When this is your measure, fear no longer has a place to stand. To live without fear of failure is not to believe you will always succeed, but to see success and failure alike as masks the world wears. One day it greets you with the mask of approval, the next with the mask of rejection. But behind both masks, the face of life is the same, a teacher offering you the next lesson. When you welcome each lesson, no matter how it comes dressed, you are no longer a servant of fortune. You become its student, but the world will still try to teach you the old lesson, the one that says your value lies in victory, that falling short is shameful. You will see others chasing praise as though it were air, avoiding risk as though it were poison. You will hear voices telling you to play it safe, to guard your image, to never try anything unless success is certain. And you must resist this. For if you live by such counsel, you will live small. You may avoid the sting of loss, but you will also avoid the joy of striving, the growth that comes only through challenge, and the deep satisfaction of knowing you dared. The Stoics did not seek danger for its own sake, but neither did they hide from it. They understood that the very things we fear often hold the key to our freedom. To fear failure is to give it power, to allow it to dictate your actions before it has even arrived. But when you walk toward it, meet it, and see it for what it is, a moment, a result, a passing thing, you rob it of its power. And once robbed, it can no longer bar the door to your aspirations. So when you stand before a choice and feel the old fear whisper, what if you fail? Answer with the question, what if I do? Let the mind play out the scene. Imagine the fall, the loss, the momentary pain. Then look beyond it to the moment after, to the part where you rise. Again, still yourself, still capable, still alive. See that there is life on the other side of failure, and in that life there is still beauty, still opportunity, still the chance to act with virtue. Once you truly see this, fear will lose its grip, for it thrives only on the belief that failure is final. When this belief is gone, you walk more freely. You take up tasks without the weight of the crowd's expectation on your back. You speak your truth without rehearsing how it will be received. You enter the arena of life not to guarantee victory, but to test yourself, to grow, to contribute what you can while you are here. And when the day comes that you stumble, you will not hide it or deny it. You will meet it as a friend. For it will have given you another chance to practice the art of living well. When the fear of failure leaves you, a certain quiet begins to settle in the soul. It is not the silence of emptiness, but of clarity. The endless noise of "what if I fall short" fades, and you begin to hear the softer, steadier voice beneath the voice that has always been there, waiting for you to listen. This voice does not demand guarantees, does not bargain with fate. It simply asks, what is the right thing to do now? And when you follow it, you find that your life takes on a different rhythm. You begin to act without the constant burden of calculation. Before, you might have asked yourself, if I do this, will I succeed? Will others approve? Will I gain what I want? Now the question changes. Will this action align with my principles? Will it make me stronger in virtue, wiser in understanding, steadier in spirit? When these become your measures, your decisions feel lighter, and yet they carry more weight in their substance. You are no longer gambling with your self-worth every time you act. You are simply living, and living well. This freedom does not mean you will never face disappointment again. Disappointment will still arrive as it arrives for all who live. But it will be a brief visitor, no longer a lingering shadow. You will meet it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Like a traveler pausing at your gate, it will come and go without setting down roots in your heart. This is the power of seeing failure as just another moment in the flow of life. It has no more claim on you than a passing cloud has on the sun, and something else happens when fear no longer rules you. You begin to notice opportunities you could not see before. Fear narrows the eyes. It keeps the gaze fixed only on the safe path, the familiar ground. But when it lifts, your vision widens. You start to see roads branching into the unknown, not as traps, but as invitations. You see that risk is not always a threat. Often, it is the doorway to what you truly seek. And even when the path leads you into hardship, you understand that hardship is not the end of the story. It is merely a chapter. Your relationship with other people changes as well. When you no longer fear failure, you have less need to prove yourself in their eyes. You do not speak to impress, but to communicate truth. You do not compete to outshine, but to grow together. The victories of others no longer stir envy, for you do not measure yourself against their fortunes. The failures of others no longer stir scorn, for you see in them the same human condition you share. This makes you more generous, more patient, more understanding, and thus more deeply connected to those around you. In this way, the Stoic freedom from fear of failure is not only a personal liberation, it is a gift to the world. A person who acts without fear is a steadier friend, a more reliable partner, a truer leader. They do not abandon their post at the first sign of loss. They do not cling to falsehood to save face. They do not let pride prevent them from admitting mistakes. They can be trusted because they are anchored not to the shifting sands of fortune, but to the bedrock of principle. This kind of steadiness is rare, and when it appears, it draws others to it. People sense in such a person a calm that is not easily disturbed, a confidence that does not need to boast. They may not know the source, but they feel it, and it is the natural result of living without the fear of failure. For when you no longer fear failure, you no longer fear truth. You can see things as they are, speak of them as they are, and act upon them as they are, without the distortion of self-protection. The ancient Stoics knew that this was not a gift from the gods to a select few, but a discipline open to anyone willing to practice it. They knew that the mind, like the body, grows stronger through challenge, and that the challenges we most wish to avoid are often the ones we most need. To train yourself not to fear failure is to place yourself in the company of those who can be trusted to endure, to adapt, and to keep moving forward no matter what. And perhaps the greatest change of all is this: when the fear of failure leaves, you become more willing to live fully. You say yes more often, not recklessly, but without the hesitation that fear once planted in your heart. You write the letter, speak the words, take the step. Try the thing that once seemed too risky. You discover that even when you stumble, life does not end. In fact, it often opens in unexpected ways precisely because you dared to stumble. The freedom from fearing failure is not a small thing, for it prepares you for more than the setbacks of daily life. It prepares you for life's greatest tests. The moments when loss is not measured in a missed opportunity, but in something dear to the heart. For if you can learn to meet small failures with composure, you are better trained to meet great losses without collapse. The one who fears the smallest stumble will be shattered by a fall from greater height. The one who accepts the stumble as part of the path will find their footing even when the ground itself shifts. There will be times when what you value most is taken from you. The friendship you thought unbreakable. The work you poured yourself into. The place you called home. The world will call these things failures. You will be told you should have done more, should have foreseen, should have fought harder. And perhaps you could have, but that is not the point. The point is that the past is no longer in your hands, and your peace rests not in what could have been, but in how you meet what is. The Stoic sees that grief may come and accepts it as part of the human lot, but does not let it harden into self-pity or despair. If you can face these greater storms without the fear of failure, then no lesser wind will move you. You will know that your worth is not tied to keeping every possession, every relationship, every plan intact. These are roles, garments, tools given to you for a time to be used well, but never mistaken for the self. When they leave, you remain still capable of thought, of choice, of virtue. That is the core the Stoics guarded above all. For in that core is true invulnerability. This invulnerability is not the absence of feeling. The Stoic does not pretend that loss is pleasant, or that failure is delightful. It is not the aim to be a stone untouched by the world. The aim is to feel deeply, but not to be ruled by what you feel. To let joy come without clinging, to let sorrow come without drowning. To stand in the middle of fortune's turning wheel, and remain yourself whether it rises or falls. When you live in this way, you discover that much of life's beauty is found in its impermanence. The blossom is beautiful because it will soon fall. The day is precious because it will soon end. A work of art gains meaning because the artist will not live forever to create more. Fear of failure blinds you to this beauty, for it keeps your eyes fixed on preservation and control. But when fear is gone, you can look at life without trying to trap it. You can love people without demanding that they never change. You can attempt great works without demanding that they last forever. You can walk forward without needing to. Own the road, and here lies another truth the Stoics knew. The fear of failure is often the fear of mortality in disguise. For what is failure, if not the loss of something we hope to keep? And what is death, if not the final loss of all that is external? To overcome the fear of failure is, in a small way, to prepare for death, not with dread, but with acceptance. When you can say, if this ends, I will remain myself, you are already practicing the art of meeting life's final end with peace in this way. The secret you have unlocked by releasing the fear of failure is not only the key to living well, but the key to dying well. And dying well, in the Stoic sense, means meeting that moment without bitterness, without regret for what you never dared, without the wish to rewrite the past. It means stepping off the stage of life as you would step off a familiar path, having played your part to the fullest, whether the crowd applauded or not. Once the fear of failure has left you, daily life takes on a different shape. The difference is not always loud or visible to others. It is subtle, like the change in air when a storm has passed. There is a stillness in your decisions, a quiet confidence in your movements. You no longer delay action for fear of the outcome, nor do you rush it out of anxiety to control the result. You simply do what is before you, fully and with care. And let the rest unfold as it will. In the morning, you rise without the burden of yesterday's mistakes pressing you into the bed. The mind that fears failure replays each misstep endlessly, as though the past could be repaired by dwelling in it. But you have learned that yesterday is beyond reach. What remains is today, and today's duties are enough to fill the hands. You give yourself to them, not as one trying to undo the past, but as one shaping the present with all the skill you have. In your work, you notice the change most clearly. Where once you hesitated to share an idea for fear it might be rejected, you now offer it freely, understanding that rejection says nothing about your worth. Where once you avoided challenges that might expose your weakness, you now seek them, knowing they are the whetstone that sharpens your edge. Praise, when it comes, is pleasant but not intoxicating. Criticism, when it comes, is instructive but not wounding. You have become a craftsman of action, measuring your work not by applause, but by whether it was done well according to your own reason. Your relationships also shift in this new freedom. You are more willing to speak honestly, for you do not fear that a disagreement will mean the end of affection. You are more generous with praise, for you do not see the success of others as a threat to your own standing. You are more patient with the mistakes of those you love, for you know that failure is not a permanent mark, but a passing event. You begin to see people not as competitors in a race, but as fellow travelers on a road that winds differently for each of you. Even leisure takes on a different quality. Without the constant need to prove yourself, rest no longer feels like wasted time. You can sit in the quiet without the itch to fill it with achievement. You can enjoy a simple walk, a shared meal, or a quiet evening without thinking of how it might be judged. For you understand now that a life is not measured only in victories, but in the fullness with which it is lived. And fullness includes both action and rest. There is also a deepening sense of gratitude that grows in this space. Fear of failure often blinds us to what we already have because it keeps our eyes fixed on what we might lose or fail to gain. Without it, your vision widens and you see the abundance already present in your life. You notice the way the light falls across your desk in the afternoon. It's the sound of a friend's voice, the steady beat of your own heart. These are small things, but they are real, and they do not depend on your record of success or failure. In time, this way of living becomes natural. What once felt like deliberate effort to focus on what is in your control, to accept what is not, to act from principle rather than fear, becomes simply the way you are. And when fear does appear again, as it sometimes will, you recognize it quickly. You do not mistake it for truth. You see it as a passing thought, not a command. And you let it go. This is how the Stoic freedom from failure shows itself not in grand displays, but in the steady accumulation of days lived without being pushed or pulled by the world's opinion. You walk your path with an open hand, willing to receive and willing to release. You give yourself to each moment, not because it will guarantee triumph, but because it is yours to live, and that is reason enough. Imagine a sailor on a long voyage. He cannot command the wind, nor can he still the sea, nor prevent the sudden darkening of the horizon. He may hope for fair weather, but he knows better than to rely upon it. What he can command are his own hands, his own mind, his own will to act when the waves grow tall. He trims the sails when the wind turns. He secures the ropes when the storm comes. He navigates by the stars when the compass fails. Whether the journey is smooth or perilous, his work is the same: to steer with skill and to keep the ship sound. This is the life of one who no longer fears failure. The sea is fortune, the weather is circumstance, and the ship is your soul. You cannot guarantee arrival at the port you desire, but you can guarantee that you will steer well, that you will not abandon the wheel when the waters rise. And if the ship does not reach the shore you imagined. You will not say the voyage was wasted, for you learned the art of sailing, and the sea itself was your teacher. There is a story told among the old philosophers of a potter who shaped his vessels from the finest clay. Some were taken to market and fetched great price. Others cracked in the kiln and were cast aside. When asked whether he was saddened by the ruined pots, he replied, "I am a potter, not a merchant. My task is to shape the clay as well as I can. The fire will do as it will." And so it is with us. We shape our thoughts, our actions, our intentions. The fire of the world will test them. Some will endure, some will not. But our task is not to command the fire. Our task is to shape the clay with care. If you fear failure, you will handle the clay with trembling hands, making your work timid and uncertain. But if you release the fear, you will work with boldness, knowing that each vessel, whether it survives the fire or not, is a step in your craft. You will find joy in the making, not only in the selling. The ancients also spoke of the archer. He draws the bow, aims with care, and releases the arrow. At that moment, the arrow belongs to the wind. The target may be struck or missed, but the virtue of the archer lies in the skill of the shot, not in the applause of the crowd. To demand that every arrow strike the mark is to set yourself against the nature of the world. To aim well, regardless of the outcome, is to live in harmony with it. When you think in this way, the weight of each moment is lifted. You are no longer crushed by the pressure to guarantee a perfect ending. You become like the gardener who plants seeds without demanding that every one sprout, who tends the soil because it is good to tend, who accepts the seasons as they come. Some seeds will take root, others will not, and yet the garden is still a place of life, and in time, something unexpected happens. By no longer fearing failure, you actually fail less often. This is not because the world becomes easier, but because you act with greater clarity and courage. Fear clouds the mind, makes the hand unsteady, causes the tongue to falter. Without fear, your actions are cleaner, more direct, more attuned to the reality before you. Even when you do not achieve your aim, you have acted without self-betrayal, and this, in the deepest sense, is never failure at all. Thus the sailor sails, the potter shapes, the archer aims, the gardener tends. Each is content to play his part in the great unfolding of things, knowing that mastery lies not in owning the outcome, but in giving oneself wholly to the task. In this way, life becomes not a series of tests to be passed or failed, but a continuous practice of skill, attention, and acceptance. When you begin to see life as a finite span, like a candle burning steadily toward its end, the fear of failure loses much of its hold. The mind that trembles before failure imagines it as something lasting, as though one moment's defeat could define all the years before and after it. But stand far enough back, and you see each event in proportion. A single wave in the vastness of the sea, a single breath in the long rhythm of life. What is one missed opportunity, one faltered step, when weighed against the entirety of your days? Consider the old olive tree on the hillside. Some years, it yields heavy branches laden with fruit. Other years, storms strip the blossoms before they can grow. Yet the tree stands year upon year, not counting its worth by a single harvest. Its roots go deep, its trunk grows strong, and it serves as shade for the shepherd, whether or not its branches bear abundance. So it is with a human life. The worth lies not in a single season's yield, but in the constancy with which you live according to your nature. Mortality reminds us that every moment is precious, not because it will lead to triumph, but because it will not come again. We are each allotted a number of breaths, a number of mornings to see the sun rise, a number of evenings to rest the body. Why spend those limited moments shrinking from the possibility of failing, when each one can instead be filled with the richness of sincere action? The river moves on whether we stand at its edge or wade into its flow. Better to enter it fully, to feel its current, even if it sweeps us toward unknown bends. The Stoic knows that legacy is not built in the monuments others may leave in your name, nor in the perfection of your record. It is built in the quiet strength of a life lived in harmony with reason and virtue. You might be remembered for victories, or you might be forgotten entirely. In either case, the true measure of your existence is found in the clarity of your own conscience. To live so that you yourself are at peace when you lay down at night. This is a greater prize than any wreath of laurel. It is easy to speak this way in calm moments. It is harder when the storm comes, and yet the truth of it does not change. Imagine the hour when you sense your life nearing its close. Will you wish you had hidden yourself from every risk, avoided every trial, so that you might reach that hour untouched by loss? Or will you be grateful that you dared, that you stood in the arena, that you gave yourself fully to the work and the love and the challenges that came to you? Failure cannot harm the one who has already accepted the finiteness of life. Death makes all outcomes equal in the end, and so what matters is not the score, but the playing of the game. The ancients taught memento mori, remember that you will die. This was not meant to darken the heart, but to clarify it. If you remember that your candle burns for only so long, you will not waste its light hiding in fear of shadows. You will carry it into the places where you are called, knowing that it will burn regardless, and better that it burn with purpose. Failure is nothing beside the loss of living fully while you have the chance, so let each day be a complete thing in itself. Let your actions today be worthy. Even if they lead to nothing, the world will praise. Let your words today be honest, even if they fall on deaf ears. Let your love today be given freely, even if it is not returned in the way you hope. For when the final evening comes, it will not be the absence of failure you cherish. It will be the presence of these moments, lived without reserve. And so we arrive at the heart of it. The secret you have been seeking was never hidden in some distant scroll or guarded by the gates of the wise. It was here, within you, from the first breath you drew. The world taught you to measure yourself by outcomes, to keep score, to tremble before the thought of falling short. But life, in its honest form, has never asked that of you. Life only asks that you live it wholly, deliberately, without leaving yourself behind in the chase for approval or the fear of its absence. Failure, as most imagine it, is a ghost of the mind. It has no shape of its own. It borrows its weight from your belief in it. When you cease to bow before it, it ceases to haunt you. You will still stumble. You will still lose. You will still see your plans undone by the hand of chance, but these will be no more fearful to you than the changing of the seasons. For you will know that no matter the harvest, you remain steadfast in the planting. Think of the life you could live from this moment forward if fear of failure were no longer your master. How many paths would you walk? How many words would you speak? How many doors would you open? The courage to act does not come from the promise of success. It comes from the certainty that you can endure whatever follows. This is what the Stoics knew, that the worth of a person is revealed not in the trophies they gather, but in the steadiness with which they meet both fortune and misfortune. When the wind turns cold and the waves rise high, you'll stand at the helm. When the keel cracks the vessel, you will shape another. When the arrow misses the mark, you will draw the bow again. And when your final hour comes, you will meet it not with the bitterness of one who never dared, but with the quiet satisfaction of one who lived as if each day were complete in itself. You have no need to wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. Only this one. Step into it with open hands. Act not because you are certain of the result, but because it is good to act. Speak not because you will surely be understood, but because it is right to speak the truth. Love not because you will be loved in return. but because to love is part of your nature. In this way, you will live freely, and failure will no longer be your enemy. It will be your teacher, your companion, a sign that you walked the edge of your courage instead of hiding in the safety of shadows. The candle is already burning. Do not waste its light. Carry it into the places you fear to go. Let it burn brightly in the work of your hands, in the truth of your voice, in the openness of your heart. For in the end, you will see that there was never anything to fear. Every so-called failure was simply another step toward the life you were always meant to live, a life unafraid, unshaken, and entirely your own.